Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Court or Courtney, whatever. And also if you don't know me, I graduated from art school in 2022. I have a BFA in illustration with honors. And so now that it's been like a year, I figured it's finally time to like talk about my thesis and maybe like show you the behind the scenes of it. Maybe, I don't know. I'm doing this like little face-to-face intro, so that's not just like my hands. But yeah, I just wanted to give like a little context if you're curious about like how my school did it and like the journey to get there. If you only just want to see the art, that's fine. I'll leave a timestamp and you can like cut right to it. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say thesis, basically from my understanding, most if not all art schools have like a culminating final project. It's basically like a final exam, but it's throughout like a period of longer time because you're like it's throughout a period of like a longer period of time because like you need time to make art, obviously. So usually there's like the art part and then there's some other part attached to it where you're like talking about your work. At my school, Maine College of Art and Design, we do our thesis in the spring semester of your senior year. That's different from other schools. I know a lot of other schools do it in the fall semester of senior year. If you go to Meca and you're in the animation game art department, you have the whole senior year to do it. So you know, they get a little extra time. Yeah, it's just in the spring, and along with the like actual art part, you also have to write a thesis paper that's like talking about your artistic practice and like that project. And then there was also a presentation part, so we had to do like a 3-minute presentation about our thesis work. I know that's kind of more than other schools. Like, I don't want to get into the details, the nitty-gritty of my school's like thesis papers because you don't want to know. We could talk about it some other time. Yeah, it was long and unnecessary. I think a lot of schools do like a process book, which was also a requirement for some people. Like the graphic design department had to do them, I think. It varies from major to major. So I am very much just talking about my experience as an illustrator at the specific school in the year 2022. So if this isn't like accurate to you, then I don't know, sorry. When I got to Meca, I did not know what I wanted to do for my thesis. I think freshman year, I was like really interested and kind of mystified in like the world of making comics. And so I thought like, oh, I'll make a comic for my thesis. But I hadn't actually like made a comic before that point. At least I don't think I did. Like, yeah, I didn't really like, I'd like conceptualized and really thought about making comics, but I hadn't made one yet. And so like freshman year, that's what I thought I was gonna do. And then kind of going into like sophomore, junior year, that's when I started creating my fake little band, who is now known as Saints for Girls, but before that had a different name. I thought I was gonna do like merchandise for them, so like t-shirts and album covers and stuff. And I still believe that would have been a fun thesis project. And before I say this, if you are my professors that I had during this time, stop watching this video. You don't want to hear what I have to say. You don't want to hear this. But basically, my thesis ended up changing because I did not want my professor's feedback on the stuff I actually wanted to do. It was getting to a point where, yeah, like of course, I would listen to my professors, but especially one of them, no, I'll say both of them, they really were just kind of dampening our spirits. The morale was low, and so the actual choosing of my thesis project started being filtered through the lens of, okay, what's something that I can work on and have fun, but also isn't too close and personal to me that if they don't understand it and don't get it and like give me shitty feedback for it, it won't crush me inside. So at the end of like our fall semester senior year, we had to pick a project. and like say like, yep, this is what I'm doing for thesis. And so the project that I pitched was kind of like a film diary. Like it's a little bit of like reportage, but basically just like a, like, I don't know, like an illustrated letterbox, basically. That's kind of how I view it. And I still want to do that at some point. I think it'd be interesting, like a fun little project thing. But I realized that, you know, watching movies is like one of my like hobbies, I guess. And so bringing that into the context of schoolwork and making it something I have to do versus something that is like a distraction or like a break from what I have to do was not going to be good for me like long term. And so I ended up kind of in the winter break between fall and spring semester emailing my professor, be like, hey, can I do this instead? And initially I wanted to do like VHS box covers for different horror things. I can't remember if I had pitched like doing alternative covers for existing movies or my own stories at this point. I can't remember when that part came about. But basically, once we got back to school, I was like, okay, the VHS things kind of take like tampering me down. So I want to do just movie posters instead. And they're for like my own movie ideas, my own little concepts. Yeah, and then that ended up changing to book covers because basically after feedback I got, everybody was like, the first one I did looked more like a book cover. So I was like, I don't care. Like, I just want to make my own stories. I don't care what you see them as. Like, I just want to make the art. So whatever makes it easier for you to understand, we can call it that. Like, we can call it like, you can call it whatever. Like, I don't really care. Sorry, I feel like I sound bitter. I swear I did like my college experience and I'm grateful for it, and I do like the thesis work I made, but like rehashing the details, I'm realizing I sound a little bitter. So let us move on from this part and actually before we get into the art, the other context was when I decided that I wanted to do my own stories, I ended up making a long list of about like 100, I think, just like log line, like one sentence story ideas. And then I kind of grouped them into genres, so like different subgenres of horror. And then I had people vote on what ones they thought would be the most interesting. And I used that as a loose guide for the actual stories I ended up illustrating. Some of them I did not do, but a lot of them I did do. So let us move on from my face and move down to my desk and we can look at my little thesis sketches. So here's the actual sketchbook that I used for my thesis. I had another sketchbook that I was using in my senior year. I just uploaded a sketchbook tour of it if you want to watch it, you know, always be plugging. But this I made specifically just for thesis stuff. I haven't used it since. I didn't use this whole thing, but it feels wrong to go back into it and like add stuff that isn't thesis stuff. So this is what it is. All of these stickers are from a class project in the fall semester of senior year where we had to make stickers for like a nonprofit, if you're curious. Fraser made that one, Jay made that one, Alyssa made that one, Opal made that one, Brady made that one, and Eric made that one. I'll put their usernames on there if you'd like. But when we open this up, you can see I actually made like a little calendar for myself. I will say, like, generally in terms of schoolwork, I kind of I'm a little intuitive maybe. I find that planners don't really work for me most of the time, and like the most I usually do is like putting things on a monthly calendar and then making to-do lists on a weekly or daily basis. Like, that's kind of what I do. But for my thesis, I decided to actually make a schedule for myself, and it was actually really helpful. I should do it more in my day-to-day life. Basically, I had done the math, and in order to make the amount of posters I wanted to make, which was 7, I needed to make them basically one every week and a half. And considering that we only had our majors class twice a week, this was basically like every 3 classes I needed to have a finished poster, which sounds like a lot. But, you know, I think like I will say I work quickly. So for me, I knew I could get it done in that time. However, I will just say now looking at it, like I cannot imagine working at this speed, at this like level of quality of work right now. My adult life has not been fortunate enough to me to be able to like focus that hard on like really finished pieces. But anyway, enough about me. So yeah, I think the semester started like end of January, but like the first couple weeks we like weren't inherently working on our thesis stuff. I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I basically laid out all of the weeks that I had to work on stuff, and then I also wrote down other important dates, like on February 28th, that's when we needed to have like our first finished piece done, so that for a critique. And then there were some other like critiques happening, and then also for the thesis paper I had dates for that. And then yeah, and then we graduated on May 27th, but thesis installation was on the 13th and 14th. I see here I wrote down a note that I was gonna animate these posters. That did not happen. I did not have the time or energy to really do that. And then also because they were books, they turned into books, I thought I was gonna kind of install them with an excerpt from like whatever the story would be, but that didn't happen either, just because I realized I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted these things to be seen in the world. So I like didn't want to like commit to writing and making myself do more work than I needed to. So for a lot of these I did make mood boards, mainly because like for my situation, I was basically like pitching the story idea along with the illustration idea at the same time. And as I maybe alluded to before, my professors routinely did not understand the work that my classmates and I were trying to do. So I felt like I had to really sort of baby them along and like really like show like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Like, here's all the things that I'm thinking about right now. But I taped some of them in here, but apparently I didn't tape all of them. So if I can find the digital files, I will pop them in here as I go along. But like, just know, I made a lot of mood boards and you'll see some of them. Anyway, so first piece that I did was signals. Now, if you are familiar with me, you'll know I actually turned this one into like a full comic, and I made a video about turning it into a comic. But at first I was just kind of generally pitching it as like a paranormal / psychological, like religious based horror thing. This says, Jean, daughter in a Catholic New England household, has never felt the same religious zeal her parents have. That is, until she hears a message from the radio tower by her house. She becomes increasingly convinced that God is communicating to her through wires and frequencies, and is determined to act upon his love and wisdom, even if she has to sacrifice everything and everyone around her. That's basically, like, it's adjacent to how Signals turned out. When I ended up making it a comic for Shortbox, I ended up making it a bit more self-contained, and less about her interactions with people and more about her internal. But anyway, we're talking about the actual poster. So this is like the first round of thumbnail sketches I did. I was basically just trying to communicate something along the lines of like sainthood and like those sorts of portraits, but then also getting the technology in there. I was referencing some Joan of Arc paintings that already existed in some of these, and my professors looked at all of these and were like, none of these are good, try again, in nicer words than that. But I was like, okay, whatever. And so here is round 2 of sketches. So this one, like, she's holding like a rosary, but it's the radio tower. And then this one is based off of more classic Joan of Arc imagery. And then this one is based off of not illuminated manuscripts, but like the sort of, I mean, kind of illuminated manuscripts, the sort of like frame within frame, like imagery and stuff that you'd see, and this is the one that I actually went with. And so here on my iPad, you can kind of see this is what the final product looked like on my iPad. I did all of these in Clip Studio Paint. I didn't do them on this specific iPad, I did them on my old one, but yeah, they're all in Clip Studio Paint, and then I took them into Photoshop to kind of finish them. I'll insert an overlay of the finished product here, but basically the difference between this and that is that I added a lot of drop shadows and texture and that sort of thing to really make it feel like a 3D object, like paper laid on paper. But yeah, this was a good one to start off on. This is a mood booster, like a confidence booster. I was still feeling kind of like self-conscious is maybe too strong a word, but I was feeling nervous about how the whole thing would go. But this one and the response to this one made me feel better about it, basically. So with my thesis, along with trying to capture different stories, I also wanted to do different styles for all of the pieces. Obviously, there's some overlap between several of them, but I wanted each one to kind of have its own style at least a little bit, so that, you know, they would all kind of, you know, show to like a client that I have more than one style that I can do. And I also forgot to mention, but I picked this for my thesis because I find it hard to stick to one thing, so I picked something where I could inherently do a lot of different things and it would keep me interested throughout the whole process. Anyway, piece number 2. So I had this idea for a story about like a small town, sort of like a folk horror thing, where basically the town every year they kind of become, it's like a ritual sort of thing. They become connected to each other with mycelium, and it's all like, it's like this festival, and like it's about like connection, aging, and death, and that sort of thing. I know what you're thinking, this is The Last of Us, and yeah, it kind of is. When I made this, I kind of forgot the whole thing about The Last of Us and how like mushrooms, like, and like, you know, mycelium and that sort of thing attach themselves to people. So yeah, this one is probably gonna have to have some shelf life before I actually turn it into a piece, like, or a bigger thing. Probably gonna have to wait till like 2035 or something, but maybe one day I'll do something. It's not the same as The Last of Us though, because like, you know, it's really more about like a small town, and like it's not inherently like a bad thing. Like, it's in the story, it's like a neutral sort of thing. But here I actually have one of the mood boards. So this was kind of the mushroom inspo. Some of these are not mushrooms, like that's just the I think that's from Twin Peaks. But yeah, this is just sort of the vibe. I was very much thinking about that one episode of Hannibal, where, like, the second episode where they have like the mushroom people. But if you get closer, so these are the thumbnails that I pitched. My professors liked these two the best, C and D, so those are the ones I actually kind of took further. And yeah, here is like what the final looked like on my iPad before I added drop shadows in Photoshop. But yeah, I was channeling my inner Jamie Green. Obviously, whenever I think about mushrooms, I think of them. And I wanted the color palette to be different from Signal, so since that one was so green, I ended up doing like the other parts of like the secondary color wheel. So got orange and like a faded purple. And again, I'll insert a photo of the finished product so you can see. But yeah, I still really like the concept behind this one, because like I like the person with the mycelium and like the different people on the ends of it. Like I think it's like, looking at it now a year out, it does look a little unfinished maybe some parts of it, but like I still think the concept was good, so good job me. So third one, 3 out of 7, was like a comedy horror one. It's basically about like a haunted convenience store and like a guy who works there. So I was kind of riffing off of that. Like, I was thinking about different sort of imagery, just sort of like punny, funny things. So like a thank you bag that's like dripping blood, and then like giving change to like a clearly not human hand, ghosts or whatever kind of floating toward the gas station. I think this one's like a welcome mat, but like they're not human feet, and then like a not human hand grabbing at like chips or something. And then this is the one that I ended up going with. It's like a slushy machine, but one of them is spouting blood instead of like cherry slushy. And yeah, so since it's like comedy, I wanted the tone to be lighter, but also like still kind of punchy and sharp. And I made it horizontal, but here's the mood board I had. You can see like kind of dark, but then like really bright pops of color. That's mainly what I was going for. I was also thinking about the Worthy Kids short where the slashers go into the convenience store. And yeah, here's what this one turned out like. It's kind of painterly, but yeah, you can kind of see like, you know, you can see what I was thinking about. I don't know, I like, I think it kind of speaks for itself maybe. Yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about it, except I do like it, and a lot of other people really liked it too. Like for some reason the algorithm really loved this one on Instagram. Not to say that like I don't like the piece, but yeah, I don't know what form this one will eventually take, but I would like to do something with it at some point, just because I do think it's funny. I think maybe like a short comic anthology where it's just like a bunch of shorts. I think that might be the best way to do it. I just wouldn't want it to like overstay its welcome, you know, but yeah, there's this one. And so here's piece 4. At this point, you know, it's like a little, like around halfway through the semester. I think it was like right before spring break, so I was feeling a little bit tuckered out. I was feeling a little like on edge, like just like, oh, I don't want to work on this stuff anymore. And so stylistically I wanted to do something that was really different. This one is called A Single Trace. It's basically about like a forest ranger who like starts looking into a missing persons case, but then shit gets weird and like they don't even know if the person they're searching for is real in the first place. Like very much sort of like psychological, nature-y. And so here is the mood board I made for this one. I wasn't sure if I was actually gonna include like a forest ranger in it, so I ended up like grabbing some images of people, and then I really did want to focus on just like a weird pathway. I was thinking about that one like r/no sleep story about the staircase in the forest. Like that's the vibe I was going for, but I still wanted to do something a little bit different. This one specifically ended up being a really crucial inspiration image. I kind of used that as like the main source. But yeah, with this one, I don't think like any of these were the one. I guess like I think this one maybe was like the closest, but yeah, the like I was just kind of going for different like imagery and stuff. I think my professors encouraged me to take the person out of it and just really focus on the nature part, so that kind of ended up influencing the outcome. So yeah, as you can see, very different from the past 3. I wanted it to be different. I wanted to go from more of like a pen and ink feel with just like a flat color behind it. Yeah, I think looking at it now, I don't love this one. I didn't really love it at the time either. Maybe like I just didn't know like exactly what I wanted from it, so I think that maybe shows a little bit. Like I feel like I could have pushed it further, but I like the concept, and I do like the approach I did of the line work with that fill in the background. Like I think that looks really nice. But yeah, I wasn't like crazy about this one, but it's okay, you know, they can't all be winners. And so at this point, I think it was after spring break, and so, you know, nose really to the grindstone. I genuinely can't remember if I made mood boards for these or if my professors just kind of trusted me enough to just go for it. I would recommend making mood boards. I did find it very helpful in the process just to have imagery to look at. It's something I should do more, to be honest, but Anyway, the next one, the concept's kind of in the name, but it's how to perform a divine autopsy. Yeah, I was basically, it's just kind of like, one of the main inspirations was this indie game. I believe it's called That Which Faith Demands by Jenna Yao. It was their thesis project in school, and it's like this text game where you're exploring the body of like a Evangelion style god, and I just found that so interesting. And so that inspired like me just thinking about like what would it mean to perform a autopsy on what was perceived to be a god. Like there's just a lot of questions there. And so yeah, I was thinking mainly like medical imagery, like anatomical Venus, that sort of thing. This is just like a bunch of like collaged medical stuff, body parts, cutting into like somebody's back. I think this is like the surgery table or whatever is like this, and then there's people looking down at it, and then like a wound man like riff, and then this is the one I ended up going with. It's basically all of the people doing the autopsy looking down at the viewer, like as if the person looking at it is the divine being in question. And so for this one, it was just a painting. I didn't do any of the like drop shadow stuff. I really wanted to try and communicate like holiness without it being like inherently like Christian or anything, just because, you know, I did do signals, which relies heavily on Christian imagery, so I wanted something that, you know, pulled from a lot of different places and wasn't just like one religion. I wanted it to feel more universal, kind of. You know, obviously I don't think it's like perfect in that regard, but anyway. So I really wanted a blue piece, just because that was a color that hasn't really shown up thus far in the pieces. And so in order to kind of communicate like how important the body is, I ended up making it glow sort of orange. And so I thought that warmth and life kind of communicated the importance of the corpse without doing anything super crazy. Yeah, I am still really interested in this concept. I think out of all the thesis pieces, I haven't turned into something more. This is next up on the list. I feel like I might change the cover though. I don't know if I'm still vibing with this one per se. Like, I like the piece, but I don't know if I like it for that context. All right, and so if you know me, you know I love a good cowboy and a good vampire. So I really wanted to do a vampire cowboy story. Actually, I think in like freshman year, like I did a final for a class that was like a vampire cowboy thing. And so I think maybe at the time I thought I was going to do that for my thesis. And I kind of did in part, but yeah, I kind of crushed it on the first one. I wanted to do like the silhouette of the guy with the title on the jacket, sort of like a nudie suit sort of thing. I wanted to do that because a lot of the other ones didn't really have the text as part of the image, if that makes any sense. Like they were kind of disconnected, so I wanted something that was a little more like diegetic and like included in it. And I did other ones just because I kind of had to, but that's the one I ended up going with. And yeah, here's what it turned out like. Yeah, this one was kind of just like, it was a little something for me, you know? Like the other ones, like I was kind of doing for the sake of like my portfolio or whatever, but this one was mainly self-indulgent. It has a lot of my favorite things, you know, got the cowboy, got the red and blue color scheme. Yeah, this one came very easily to me. I believe I finished it early, which ended up making it so that I finished all of my pieces early, which was great. But like, yeah, this one is for me, you know? It was a little treat for me. All right, and so we're on the last one. This one, I wanted to do like a riff on the sort of like puberty as grotesque or monstrous like thing that there's a lot of movies that kind of fall into it. Like I would say like The Jennifer's Body, The Craft, Ginger Snaps, like that sort of teen girl horror. I wanted to do my own little riff on that, but I wanted mine to be about mermaids. You know, if you know me, you know H2O, just add water. It's very important to me as a child. And so I, like, as an adult, I keep thinking about what would have happened if one of those spells actually worked and the implications of that. So yeah, initially it was called Some Mode It Be because, like, in a lot of mermaid spells, that's how they ended. But it ended up becoming the shallow end. I wanted to name it the shallow end of a deep pool, but my professors were like, no, like, that's kind of needless. So I was like, fine, whatever, it's called the shallow end, like, you win. Yeah, so it's a lot about, like, friendship, but also, like, the grotesque part of the mermaid transformation. So I have, like, gills growing in. This one's just kind of swimming. This one's like a pinky promise between two people. This one's like the transformation under the water, and this one's like a little locker shrine dedicated to the mermaid stuff. I ended up going with trying to shave the scales off and the sort of bloody aftermath. This is where I'm going to put a content warning for, like, light blood and, like, you know, they look like they could be like SH scars or wounds, and I guess they are in a sense because they're self-inflicted, but it's like if you cut yourself while shaving, that's like what it looks like. But if you don't want to see that, that's totally fine. That is your content warning. I'll put like a little thing I'll put a timestamp, so if you don't want to see it, you can skip ahead. But yeah, this is what the shallow end turned out like. I wanted to do something really punchy and vibrant with color and more wide of a color scheme than any of the other ones. This one kind of has the full rainbow versus having like a limited color palette. And yeah, I still do really like this piece. Again, like, I really do want to do something with this story idea, but I don't know if this will be the cover for it, just because I do know that this is a little grotesque for something that you'd see like on the cover of something. So, but yeah, I was like at the end of this whole project, and I was like, fuck it, whatever, I'll do whatever I want. And yeah, that's the end of my thesis, and also the end of this video. So I hope it was interesting kind of seeing the sketches and stuff. I'm afraid, like, I maybe should have made this video sooner after I finished my thesis pieces, because I'm afraid I like forgot a lot of the minutia because it's been a year. But yeah, if you're doing a thesis project this upcoming year, my advice to you is to, you know, pace yourself, try to pick something that, you know, is still exciting and like fulfilling and challenging a little bit, but not something that you'll kill yourself over. Like, it is ultimately just another project. So just try to enjoy it. Maybe don't pick like your dream project just because you might not want feedback from other people on it. And try to pick something that your professors will understand if that's something you also deal with. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more of my videos, I have more of them. You can subscribe and comment what your favorite one was, maybe. Hey, you know, who's to say? And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.